Stephen, firstly, I suppose, welcome to Hartlepool United. I know you've been here a few weeks, but it's the first time we'll be able to sit down and really catch up all about yourself and all about your time that's going to be at the club. So I suppose, firstly, you've been here 3 weeks now. What's your first impressions of Hartlepool United?
Wow, yeah, thanks Alex. Well, it's been a bit of a baptism of fire, to be honest. I think when I started we had a little bit of a staffing crisis with regards to a COVID outbreak within the administration staff, so it was kind of very hands-on for the first few weeks and rolling up my sleeves and kind of doing the things I was probably doing 20 years ago, which was great actually. So being thrown at the deep end is never a bad thing, and thankfully everybody came through. We managed to get the few games on, and now it's the chance of really being able to sit down, talk to the team and kind of reflect on the last few weeks, but start planning for the future, which I'm really excited about.
Planning for the future, I know that's a thing you spoke about, especially to the staff around the office last few weeks. You spoke about how much potential you see in this club and how much you want to help with that, and you've seen that potential obviously not just on the pitch but off the pitch as well.
Yeah, it's incredible really. I mean, first thing I would say is you know, the support base is fantastic. I've never really seen anything quite like it, and you know, I've now worked in all 4 divisions in the professional game, for the Premier League down to kind of League 2, and I must say, first of all, the supporters are incredible, you know, and I didn't actually realise what it meant to the town until I joined the club, but I think the staff and the people that work in the club and the volunteers and everybody that's around the place are representative of that. You know, a lot of the staff are fans, a lot of the people have been coming to the pools for generations. So I feel very privileged, to be honest, that I'm here and been chosen to lead the club to the kind of next phase.
You mentioned it just before there, you've got over 20 years of experience in all 4 divisions. What can you bring in terms of your experience to really help this club in steps going forward?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, what that kind of experience brings is, I think first of all, people may have noticed over the last few weeks I'm quite a calm head. So, you know, when things do sometimes get a little bit out of control, I'm probably quite experienced in terms of just reining things back in and being a bit level-headed, but I think, you know, 20 odd years experience now in football has kind of led me to this position, so I've kind of taken the commercial route to get to where I've got to now, and I chose, it was a conscious decision really, to take a step back in leagues, to take a step forward in position. So this is my first position as Chief Operating Officer, and one that I've been working towards for kind of the last 20 years, so you know, I'm ready to grab it by the scruff of the neck and kind of really lead the club to the next generation. So I just think the experience that I've got so far, I think certainly in the higher leagues, is the professionalism, and I think one thing I've spotted around the club is that we've got a very small but perfectly formed team. You know, everybody really wants to do the best, but under difficult circumstances, you know, we haven't got the most resources in the division. And one thing that the bigger clubs afford you is staff and resources and the equipment to do the job, and you know, we are a little bit thin on the ground, but you know, one thing I would say is that while the club currently is a little bit probably rough around the edges in terms of the staff and the people that work here, everybody's heart's in the right place and everybody hopefully is pulling in the right direction. Next week I'll be sitting down with yourself and all the rest of the team to discuss the future and discuss some values for the club and discuss a vision and what I expect from the staff and what they can expect from me in return. And it's just a really exciting time, and I think there's a lot of renovation work that needs to be done. And I think the fans also just need to, you know, understand as well that from the summer and the way we got promoted down in Bristol, it was such a short window to try and get ready the administration side of things, moving from one division into the EFL again, and the administration tasks that go with that when you are a short team and we haven't got loads and loads of resources at our disposal. Everybody here should be really proud of themselves as to how well we've done to get to this point, and I think it was probably us all hands on deck just trying to get the games on, and of course we've not got it perfect all the time. I think in terms of, you know, customer service levels and, you know, running out of things in the shop and things like that, yes, it's not ideal, but I think people just need to also understand that in a very short space of time we didn't really understand which division we were going to be in. We had to have a plan A and a plan B, and everybody's worked terribly hard to get to the position we're in now, and I think now 3 or 4 games in at home, we're now in a position where we can start putting the rest of it right. So I think on the pitch, obviously Dave and his team are doing tremendously well. Dave's got a great work ethic and you can see that, and hopefully I have too in terms of everything that we're doing off the field. I'd like to form a really good working relationship with Dave and his team, and almost kind of join us together. It's a one club mentality. Some clubs you do find people work in silos. Even here, it's not done on purpose. It's just the way we are, especially with the training ground being over in Durham and having a little bit of a trek. Not everybody doesn't necessarily know each other. So I'll be talking a lot about kind of the team around the team, and you'll hear that a lot next week internally in terms of the staff and what I expect. But it's not just about the players, it's not just about Dave and his management team, who are doing fantastically well. It's about how do we work together to service them so that everything around them is the best it can be, and that's all the way through the club, whether that be the coach driver, whether that be the cleaning staff, the facility staff. It comes down to how many shirts we sell in the shop. It's everything. It's everybody pulling together in the same direction rather than working against each other. So if I can kind of harness that and work with everybody, and everybody works to their full potential, we raise the standards and be professional, then it's really exciting. And what a great start we've had to the season. A brilliant fan base, so far so good.
You spoke about from the beginning how the one thing you wanted to do was really communicate with the fans and sit down and do this interview. How important is that we continue this communication so fans are kept updated with what's going on and how the club's moving forward?
Yeah, it's really important to me, and so far it's only a few weeks in, but I've tried to get around as many kind of supporters groups as I can, and see another one this evening. It's really, really important, and I think it's important that we open that dialogue, but in a controlled manner. I think it's very easy to kind of get drawn into the day-to-day, communicating to fans, replying to emails all day long, but the amount of emails you get on a daily basis, you'd never get any of the day job done. So I think it's very important for me. It's a fine balance between driving the football club forward and making sure that we give the fans an opportunity to let us know what they think. So that's something I'll be quite early doors putting in place. Regular meetings with supporters groups, and if you're not a member of a supporters group, then very shortly we'll be recruiting for a supporter liaison officer who will be fielding a lot of that kind of traffic, if you will, into the football club. And I'm more than happy to meet anybody with notice on a kind of one-to-one basis. But ideally, we'll meet probably every 6 weeks, and we'll get all the fans groups together. And ultimately, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants the football club to be successful. I know there's lots of different football supporters groups here, and they've all probably got slightly stand for slightly different things. And for me, that's great. It's about how do we get the best out of each of the supporters groups individually, and then there'll be certain things that can we all join forces and work together on. And as long as we're all going in the same direction and we're not pulling each other sideways, then I think we've got a great opportunity to kind of jump on the back of that tremendous support base to take us to the next level, because ultimately this is what it's about. It's about the supporters, it's about the fans. I've got people messaging me about the Poolies from all over. I've worked in all 4 corners of the UK now. I've got people down south sending me videos of the Poolies, and Dave going up to them after the game with his northwest corner kind of almost cult following now. So that's fantastic, and I think it just feels like there's something really special happening here. I know I'm new to the football club, but when I speak to people, directors, I speak to yourself, I speak to the supporters, it does feel like we've been through a bit of a dark time, but ultimately we're on our way back, and it's really, really special at the moment to be part of it.
You spoke about long-term targets beforehand. You've been here 3 weeks now. Is there certain priorities, targets that you've got for this season, I suppose, and then after this season in the long-term future?
Yeah, obviously whenever you go into a new job, you've got to try and observe a few things before you start making kind of big changes. But in terms of what I'm trying to achieve, sort of short, medium and long-term goals is the way you've got to do it. And in the short term, what I would say is, to try and match where we are on the field, it's just about putting some process and procedures in place. And it's the simple things like the touch points in terms of our brand, what do we represent? We've changed our crest over the recent years. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to the supporters? How do we communicate with fans? Our tone of voice when it comes to your job in terms of communicating with fans on social media and in the press. Are we using the same basic things really, but are we using the same typography when we're talking to people, and what fonts are we using? Are we using the right crest? Are we using simple things that you take for granted, but at this club currently we are a little bit behind. So there'll be certain things in place with regards to sort of brand guidelines, and then next week internally we'll start talking about the club values. What do we stand for? Who are we? What do we represent? What should our vision be moving forward? And of course, then we want to involve the fans in that as well, and you know, they should help shape the future of the football club. Because I do think, honestly, it's a new dawn. Really, it does feel like a new era, and we've got a brilliant opportunity as custodians of the club to really drive and develop the future. So that's the kind of short term, is to try and get some procedures and processes in place, tidy the place up a little bit. We've got renovation work starting next week. We've got some fantastic supporters that offer their services free of charge, or you know, they kind of spread the word for us. So I'm recruiting a few volunteers as we speak, and as of next week the office suites will start getting decorated, the main reception will be decorated, the hallway down to the 1908 bar. So that's kind of the first project, and then after that you'll see outside, if you drive past in the evening, even things like the shutters. You know, they've probably not had a lick of paint for quite a few years. So I just want us to look and feel better. But to be honest, whilst we are a little bit rough around the edges at the moment in terms of the stadium and aesthetically how it looks, I'd much rather we get things right in terms of how we communicate with our supporters, our customer service, making sure our shop offering, our ticket offering is right, and we communicate to people and treat people well. I'd rather have that than a shiny new stadium and staff that don't sort of give a damn about the supporters. So hopefully the two things will marry up at some point, and we'll have a fantastic stadium. We'll develop it over time. We'll make the place smarter. We'll make it a better atmosphere on a match day for you. But at the same time, you know, I want the staff to be really professional, really proud to wear the badge, and taking ownership really of their own areas. And if everybody does that, individually and as a team, then I'm confident that we'll move in the right direction.
Well, you clearly have very high standards, and obviously that's something that's great to see. Is that the type of leadership style you've kind of always had? And obviously you mentioned you worked a lot in commercial communications, but that high standards and leadership style is something you're obviously going to bring into this club?
I think so. I think, you know, one thing that when you've been in football for quite a long time, I think, you know, I've worked at a few big clubs now, and there's certain people who stand out that you kind of learn from. You know, you see, you know, yourself in any walk of life, whether that be family or whether that be professional. I mean, one thing I would say is, you know, I work hard in terms of my own personal work ethic. I would say that's very high. That's probably been installed to me from my parents. You know, my dad works in a factory, came from a working class background. My mum was a nurse. She gave up work to look after my grandparents when they were poorly. My dad had worked seven days a week to be able to afford to take us on holiday, and I think, you know, that kind of stays with you. In terms of the kind of working experience, the people that I've worked with, I remember at Norwich City, first of all, David McNally, the chief exec there, ultimately is the kind of chief exec one day that I'd like to be. You know, you kind of learn as you go through the years, and different football clubs and different leadership styles. You kind of take the best from everybody, and you kind of try and do things that you didn't agree with differently yourself. So I think Dave McNally was a fantastic shining light really at Norwich. He invested a lot of time in his people, made sure that he gave people responsibility at a young age. Didn't really matter how old you were, if you were kind of, you know, good enough, you were old enough kind of mentality. So he surrounded himself with really good people. That followed by Ben Kensel, who's now moved on to Hibs as Chief Executive Officer. Again, he took over from David. I learned a lot from Ben that I'll hopefully be able to bring into this role. So I think in terms of my standards, yes, they are high, but I'll be setting challenging but achievable targets. And I just ultimately want everybody to come to work and enjoy it. I don't want people to come to work and be miserable. I want people to come to work and realise that, you know, you work hard, you kind of play hard mentality, and it's all right to make a few mistakes as long as we're learning and we're moving forward. At the minute, it feels a little bit like one step forward and two steps back, but hopefully, you know, we'll keep moving forward. And the experience that I've learned over the years from the people that I respected will obviously help with that. Just
finally and quickly, what does success at Hartlepool United look like for you in your new role?
I think, to be honest, for me it's about the people. I think, you know, whichever way you look at it, you know, whether it be the supporters, whether it be the staff, and ultimately, you know, the results on the pitch, I can't really influence that. You know, that's down to Dave and the lads to kind of perform on the pitch. But I certainly think off the field, if we can become an established EFL football club again, and not be looking over our shoulder and worried about the drop, but actually looking forward and seeing how far up the pyramid we can go again. If we can do that, if we can grow our fan base, if we can harness the kind of goodwill that we've got at the moment in the stands, the staff are happy, everybody feels like they're valued and they want to develop and stay at the football club and learn and listen, then in 12 months' time, if we look back and we've achieved all those things, I think that will be success.
Stephen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.